Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about preparing our children for primary one. So, my name is Charis. I'm the head of the Teaching and Curriculum team, and I'm happy to share with you today some of the questions that are on our parents' minds about how can we best prepare our children for the P1 transition. So, let me just get started here by first asking everyone to check that your sound and screens are working. You can go ahead to give us a thumbs up in your reactions button, okay, so that we know that actually you are able to hear or see us. If there are any technical issues, you can go ahead and try to re-enter the Zoom link, which was emailed to everyone. Okay, so before I get started, I would like to introduce the Eton Academy and what we are about. So we are actually part of the Eton House Group, and we are set up to offer English, Math, and Science enrichment classes for N2 to P6 children. And just to share a bit of a background about the reason and the story for why we are here. So our founder shares that for many years, our Eton House children who have graduated, they have come back to tell us how much they enjoy their learning with us, and they miss Eton House and they would like to continue that learning journey. So in response to this, we started the Eton Academy, which allows our Eton House children to come back for our enrichment classes and feel that they are back home, because we use an approach, our teaching approach is very similar to the Eton House one, but of course we have tailored that to also fulfill MOE learning outcomes. So as I'm sharing and I'm speaking, if you have any questions that come to your mind, please feel free to share it in the Zoom chat, and we will collate and get back to you at the end of the session. We welcome all and any questions, of course. And of course, before I get started, we would like to get to know you. So please quickly share in the chat if you would like to, what age group your child is in, possibly N2, K1 or K2, or any other age groups. Please go ahead and share in the chat. I'll be able to tailor the discussion accordingly. Okay, so some top concerns on our parents' minds. Usually, when I speak to parents at our centers, these are the questions that's usually on their minds when they're in the early years, right? So, is my child required to read at P1? Are there any kind of math skills my child is required to learn? And what does it mean actually to be classroom ready for the P1 context? So I'll be covering all of these questions in the sharing for today. Of course, if there's anything else on your mind, please feel free to share in the chat and we'll be happy also to respond. Okay, the first question is a big one. Is my child required to read? The question about whether a child can read or not is also a really big one. Some children can read simple sight words. Some children can read whole sentences of chapter books already when they're P1. So what does this mean? When, of course, you ask this question if you direct this question to MOE, the official answer is, of course, no. MOE at P1, the teachers are required to be prepared to take in children at all reading levels, and they are also trained to do so. In trying to respond to this question, one thing that we might look at is actually something called the MOE Learning Support Program. So this program is actually targeted at English and mathematics. Okay, so these two subjects, and it's aimed to provide additional support to pupils who enter primary one with weak English or weak numeracy skills. Okay, so these are two screening tests that actually all the children in P1 will actually go through. They are called the early literacy indicators and the early numeracy indicators. So if your child is identified as in need of added support, what will happen is that the students will be pulled out of their form classes in small groups, so groups of about 5 to 10 for one period a day. And then they will typically actually arrange for the very experienced and trained teachers to give that added time to these children so that they will get the added boost that they need. The reason why maybe not a lot of parents are aware about this is because, of course, MOE doesn't publicize this, I'm guessing, so that it doesn't cause any undue worry or anxiety on your part, right? And also on my part, I will also say there's no real need also to be very anxious about this, because anyway, the reason for this assessment is that it is diagnostic. So the test will diagnose if your child needs added support, and if they do, then the added support will be given to them by the school. Okay, so what is actually covered in this test? So the reading screening test covers the 5 essential reading skills. This is actually taken from US research from the National Reading Panel. So the 5 skills that basically sum up into what it means to read are phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. But what does this mean and how does this translate into the actual test? So we don't know the exact questions. What we know is anecdotal sharing from parents whose children have gone through the test and maybe they remember, some questions from this, right? So some samples, maybe they will be required to identify and copy the letters of the alphabet. They would copy simple words and sentences. So the words and sentences are provided and they just need to copy. Okay, find the correct pictures that match simple words. Write the letters of the alphabet from memory. Find the word with the correct beginning letter sounds. So they might see a picture of a box and then they have to circle the word box because they have to identify that the letter B makes the B sound. Okay, identify pictures that rhyme. So these are the ending sounds of the words. And then also to spell very simple words. So looking at this, it doesn't actually look very scary, right? So it's possible that most children, they can be quite well prepared for P1. And also they are able to meet these baseline standards, right? Also to have a look at the math screening test. So for the numeracy screening test, also nothing too scary actually, right? So is the child able to complete an A-B pattern? So an A-B pattern, you can imagine, for example, the beads on a string. So let's say it goes red, blue, and then blank. So they have to fill in red or they have to color red, right, to complete the pattern. Okay, count the number of objects within 10, so just numbers 1 to 10. Match numbers within 10 to the corresponding words. So can they identify that 8 is spelled E-I-G-H-T and match accordingly? Are they able to understand the concept of more or less or fewer? And then can they complete some simple number patterns? Okay, so as described, these are all not very scary standards. These are the baseline standards, and then MOE will actually provide that additional support if they find that the children actually needs them, right? On your part, maybe as parents, you might also be wondering if your child actually needs a phonics program. The reason why phonics programs are so popular is because phonics is basically building the reading blocks of the basic blocks of reading. So if you feel that your child still needs an added boost or some added supplement, okay, that's something that you might want to consider. So here I'm happy to share with you a brief overview of the phonics curriculum that we cover at the Eton Academy. So we do offer phonics and we teach phonics for our age groups from N2 to K2. And just to show you how the skills progress over the levels. So at the start, generally we teach children to identify beginning letter sounds. So just now I mentioned about the picture of a box. So we'll give them stickers, and then in the sticker there will be the word box, but they don't have to actually read the word box yet. At the start, sometime in N2, we will teach them to be familiar with the beginning letter sounds. So if they see the word B, can they make the sound B, B, box, right? And then the second picture would be pencil. So can they identify that P, P, pencil, okay, corresponds with the letter P. So we start with that, beginning letter sounds. And later on, we also progress to teach vowel sounds. So it starts from the simple A, E, I, O, U sounds. And then also the ones with 2 letters, we actually call them digraphs, okay, and they also produce slightly different sounds. So they need to be familiar with the whole range of these sounds, right? So here we have an exercise that just focuses on the vowel A, which makes the eh sound. So ant, or alligator. And in class, of course, the teacher doesn't just get the children to fill in worksheets. It's supplemented with a lot of games and activities and a lot of interaction for the children to run around the classroom while reinforcing their knowledge of these sounds. And then at the end, also, it gets a bit more complex with ending consonant blends and also digraphs. Again, digraphs are 2 letters. So, for example, the word duck ends with CK. The word push ends with SH. So, as they progress through the phonics skills, they'll be able to put these sounds together with a lot of blending practice from the teachers. That's how the children pick up learning, reading in our classrooms. Okay, so just an overview of what I just described. So we do offer the phonics curriculum for our N2 to K2 children at the Eton Academy. So this is like a year-long reading program, a year-long literacy program. If you are looking for something that's more of an added boost over a shorter period of time, you may also consider our Young Readers program. So we offer this program for our K1 to P1 children. So for example, if you have joined this session and your child is going to be in P1, but you're still a little bit anxious that your child is not quite there yet with reading. So in this accelerated program over 14 weeks, we will actually expose your child to phonics, okay? And then at the end of the 14-week program, a sentence like this, we are quite confident that most of our students are able to read a sentence like that quite independently. So a sentence like that has words like can and mask. So this, with the knowledge of the beginning, the middle, and the end sounds, they're actually able to blend and sound it out, mask, okay, and sound out the word. Also, words like she and is, they are what we call sight words. So very high frequency words that sometimes you cannot use phonics to sound out the words. So these are words also that they will be exposed to in their program. Okay. So moving on, I would like to give parents an idea about what to expect at Mo Ep1. I might also cover some of what to expect at P2, because at P1 and P2 now with the schools, it can be quite varied what the school teachers decide to teach or what they decide to assess students on. Now, as you know, for P1 and P2, because the ministry has actually taken out exams, so, you know, I think life is indeed a bit more enjoyable when they are in P1 and P2. But of course, again, if parents would like to know a bit more about what to expect, I'm happy to share with you now. So here's an overview of the different components to be covered at English. So English is essentially about skills, reading skills, writing skills, grammar, vocabulary. So in essence, whatever that may be covered in school, we will definitely cover it at TA P1, at Eton Academy for P1. So just to give an example of comprehension open-ended, maybe in school, they may be expected to read a passage on their own that's about 50 to 80 words. Over here, we try to expose our children to longer passages, so around 200 words, and of a higher lexical difficulty. That means the choice of words that we use would be more difficult so that they will be challenged in their vocabulary, right? And we do a comprehension about 4 to 5 times the term. Closed passages, this is where they have to fill in the blanks with a word, and typically helping words are given. So yeah, our passages also tend to be longer and with more difficult vocabulary. We do this about 2 to 3 times a term. Okay, for grammar, about 5 to 7 times. We will cover simple concepts like simple present tense, simple past tense, subject-verb agreement. Okay, vocabulary, we do that actually every week. So every week they will learn a new word. For word order and synthesis, I just want to make a comment that typically at P1 and P2, they should expect mostly word order questions. But over here, we do a little bit of exposure to synthesis questions a bit earlier, and to give your child a bit of a head start. If you don't know what this question is like, I'll show you some examples later. So for writing, some schools may start to introduce to composition writing at P1 or 2, and some schools may choose not to. So they might do more interesting writing exercises like writing a diary entry, writing recipes. Okay, so for us, we also try to vary the writing task a bit. So definitely we will do composition writing still. This is a very difficult skill, and we feel that it is important for children at P1 and P2 to get the exposure. But we also do writing for other text types at about 3 to 4 times a term. Okay. Another thing that we do is something called the language review. So this is the paper tool where they will be tested on comprehension, closed messages, things like that. So we actually do this about once a term, starting from term 2 onwards. This is a great chance for parents to get a sense of where your child is at, precisely because actually the schools have taken out the exams. So here at Eton Academy, we will actually give them this assessment, and then the teacher will talk to you about how your child is doing and how you might want to plan their revision if there are things that they need to brush up on. In school, they also do show and tell, where they stand in front of their classmates and they talk about something. And this is something that we do at almost every lesson. It's called Develop Your Voice. And we'll give our children an opportunity to speak up and share about something every lesson. Okay, so quite a lot of repetition here for P2. I just wanted to highlight to you that, of course, for comprehension passages, these are actually longer in school and also longer at the Eton Academy. We also introduce a more difficult question type here at P2. The rest are the same, but there is a greater focus on a lot more composition writing at P2 to get them ready for P3. And at P2, one more note is that some schools still do oral assessments. Some schools have dropped it completely and brought it to P3. But here at Eton Academy, we will do oral practice at P2. Okay, this is a picture of a comprehension exercise that a parent has shared with me. This is actually taken from P1. So sometime around the middle of the year, the children would be expected to be able to complete an exercise like this. So you can see the passage is not very long, maybe about 40 to 50 words. Okay, and the words used are not very difficult as well. So they are also not really required to write incomplete sentences yet. So the answer to number 1, where was Jane? You know, from the first sentence, you can see as Jane walked through the jungle, Jane was in the jungle. Okay, and that's all that's required from them. And then also, which words in the passage has the same meaning as not moving? So if you read the passage, the words are actually here. She froze. This is one word. And another word will be here, stopped. Okay. And then the third question, order these activities 1, 2, and 3. This is actually a sequence question. And sequencing questions, this is something that they will see all the way until P6. So this question type will remain until then. Okay, so this is an example of what is required. So again, at the Eton Academy, our journals will look a bit more complex than that. I also wanted to show you that at K2, we already have early exposure to story comprehension or reading comprehension already in our K2 level. So, of course, we want to keep our lessons very interesting and current for the children as well. You may have heard of this lady called Greta Thunberg, or this girl actually, I think she's 17 years old this year, and she's famous for speaking up about climate change. So this book is about Greta, so it's called Greta and the Giants. And after we read the book in class, there's a follow-up activity about creating signs to get the giants' attention. So this is a sign that the children will discuss and co-create together, maybe with their teacher, and they get to have an interesting discussion about it. Now, after that, they will actually answer some questions about what they read in the book. And you can see that for question 1 and 2 here, these are actually open-ended questions. So, of course, with a lot of discussion and support from the teacher, they will arrive at the answer, and the teacher will teach them how to package the answer. So things like starting with a capital letter, answering in a complete sentence, and then putting a full stop at the end. Okay, so these are ways that our K2 teachers are actually already preparing children for P1. And also for P1, our comprehension exercises look similar to this, but with passages that the team will write with the longer word count, as I shared previously. Okay, so now we would like to give it a try with our parents, whether or not you might be capable to answer P1, P2 grammar or synthesis questions. So let's give it a go. Okay, so our first question here, Bala likes to cycle in the park. He also likes to sing in the choir. And the word that we want to use to connect both sentences together is the word and. Okay, so you don't need to type out the full answer for me. I actually have two possible answers. Oops, I just revealed the answer. Okay, I have two possible answers for you. Okay, a possible answer number one would be Bala likes to cycle in the park and he also likes to sing in the choir. Okay, so the question for this one would be, why could this be wrong? Okay, so when a teacher is teaching synthesis, she's also teaching rules about sentence formation, right? When we use the word and, there are actually certain words that we don't need to keep in that sentence, right? So maybe a better and more streamlined answer might be the second one, right? So the correct answer is actually Bala likes to cycle in the park and sing in the choir, right? So there's no need actually to add the extra or repeated information in the second half of the sentence. So that's actually one thing that our P1 and P2 children need to take note of when they attempt synthesis questions. Okay, let's try another one. All right. So Mrs. Davy blank in her diary every night before bed. And we have a few options there, right? Wrote, writes, it's writing. Please feel free to share your answer in the chat if you would like to give this a try. Thank you for your answer. Okay, so when we teach grammar, right, we will teach them what to look up for when they look at the sentence and what are the keywords to highlight. All right, so every night, those are two keywords to highlight because that will tell you that these are actions that happen habitually or regularly. So thank you to those who participated. You are right. Mrs. Devi writes in her diary every night. So whenever we see a keyword like every night, every day, every week, generally the answer would be in present tense. Okay, now let's have a look at TA mathematics. All right, how do we teach math here? Okay, and to give you also an overview about what to expect at P1 and P2. So this is quite standard across the schools and probably quite standard across different enrichment layers. Probably, you know, what you might see is that certain enrichment players might want to have a bit of early exposure, and we do that as well through our stretch practices. Okay, but just to give you an overview that these are the key concepts that the P1 and P2 children will need to learn in the first 2 years of primary school. Okay, and here how we try to make the learning of mathematics fun, engaging and interesting for our children. We link it to authentic learning experiences and we link it to numbers and concepts in the real world. It's also focused on investigative learning. So every lesson, there will always be a practice that allows the children to have hands-on learning using MathLink cubes or using actual shapes to represent what they are learning in class. The teacher will also teach it in a style that's very interactive and hands-on. Okay, to give you an example of how we do that for the early years primary, okay, more, fewer, equal, this is a concept that they will also have to learn at P1. right? But how we try to teach it to our K1 children is that we'll actually read a book. So this book is actually about carrots, okay, just enough carrots. They're shopping for carrots, and there's a lot of opportunity for counting as we are reading this book, right? As a follow-up activity to the book, we will look at rabbits, carrots, and then so you can see here in this picture that there are 4, and here the child is supposed to fill in the answer more, the same, or fewer. Okay, so these are the concepts that the teacher will teach. And here in this picture, you can see that we are using these blocks to represent the number of carrots that they are learning. So this is what we call the concrete pictorial abstract, CPA. And this is something that at P1 MOE, the teachers will continue to use. So what does that mean? When we teach a mathematical concept, it is typically easier for a child to understand it in concrete terms first. So the number of carrots, which is represented by the blocks here in the picture, we will use that to show the child in concrete terms first and talk about things like more, fewer. When they are able to see it in front of their eyes or touch it with their hands, they are able to understand those concepts a lot better. After that, they move on to a pictorial form, which is actually this table here, where you're able to see the number of carrots in a pictorial form. And then in the abstract form, that's when they move on in P1 to write number equations, you know, like 4 plus 1 equals 5, right? So that would be an abstract form. So this is how we capture the concrete, pictorial, and abstract concept in our curriculum as well. Okay, so this is an example of how we teach math at P1. Just now I mentioned that we try to connect it to concepts in the real world. So this is actually about heart rate, okay? And the typical normal range for heartbeats, okay, for an age, you know, for the different age bands, 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years, and so on. And the concept that the teacher is trying to teach is actually subtraction within 1,000, right? So here, the children are invited to pay attention to the table, to the actual research, right? So Math Sleuth here is 7 years old. So they must come to a number, identify a number here in the table. After that, they are invited to now try and figure out what's the difference between the actual heart rate and the maximum heart rate for her age group. And after we have tackled Math Sleuth's heart rate, they will actually talk about their own. So their own age, what would be their heart rate range? Okay, what is their heart rate now? So they will actually measure their heart rate and then they'll compare it in class with their teachers and their friends. Then make a comparison, is the heart rate within the normal range? All right, and then we will start to do subtraction. So what's the difference between your heart rate and maximum one and your heart rate and the minimum one? So this is how we do subtraction with contextual knowledge of the real world. This is how we get the children to connect numbers to what's actually going on in the real world. Okay, and now also our parents we can give it a try. Okay, so this is a good one. Is 2 times 5 the same as 5 times 2? I will not deny that this is a tricky question. Okay, please go ahead and share your guesses or your answers in the chat. Is 2 times 5 the same as 5 times 2? Okay, thank you for participating. So I'm guessing some questions that come to mind would be, well, 2 times 5 is 10 and 5 times 2 is 10. Of course, it's the same. But also there's that sense of if it's the same, it can't be that simple, right? You know, then maybe the answer is no, it's not the same. But I kind of know that it's the same. So what do I mean? Okay, so if you represent it in groups, right? So the idea that 2 times 5 is actually 2 groups of 5 and 5 times 2 is actually 5 groups of 2, then the answer would be no, not really, right? It's not really quite the same. How does this translate to word problems? So word problems or problem sums is something that your child might get to see when they get to P1 and P2. And they might be asking a question about 2 pencil cases with 5 pencils in each of them, or 5 pencil cases with 2 pencils in each of them. And when we represent that in our working, depending on the phrasing of the question, so it is actually 2 groups of 5, then the lower primary math teacher might actually expect that the child represents it in 2 times 5. If the question is talking about 5 groups of 2, then we represent it with this number equation, 5 times 2. So there could be some level of disagreement sometimes, when even though in the end the child might end up at the correct final answer, which is 10, but the way they present the working, that might be something that the math teacher might require. So this is something to take note of. Okay, but my colleague who heads the math team in our center would like to share with the parents that sometimes when they go up to P3 or P4, the P3, P4 teacher might not actually require the same thing. So just to let you know, okay? Mathematically, of course, 2 times 5, 5 times 10, you end up with the same correct answer, it is 10. Here's another question. Is a square a rectangle? Right, so we're looking for yes or no questions. Is a square, yes or no answer, sorry. Is a square a rectangle? Okay, so we have some responses there. Here's another question. Is a rectangle a square? Okay, is a rectangle a square? Yes or no? All right, thank you very much for participating. So, yes, you are right. Okay, is a square a rectangle? The answer is yes. But is a rectangle a square? The answer is no. All right. So what's the definition of a square and a rectangle? So all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So understand that, okay? We need to know that a rectangle is made of 4 sides, okay? But a square is actually made up of 4 equal sides, right? So in that case, when a square is a rectangle, yes, because a square will also always have 4 sides, but rectangles don't always have 4 equal sides. All right, so all of you are correct there. And this is a concept that will be covered at P1 under shapes. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about classroom readiness. All right, so this is also a common concern on parents' minds. How can I get my child ready for that P1 environment? And over here, we would like to share a book that we feel might be really good to read with your child. Okay, this book is titled The Night Before First Grade, and it features the main character being very excited to start her first grade, so primary 1 also. She has everything planned and she cannot wait to sit with her best friend in class. But of course, things don't go according to plan. So the events in this story will be a great opportunity for parents to actually talk about with your child, like what do you think you might do? How do you think you might feel if you are this person, this happens to you? You really want to sit next to your friend, but it didn't work out because you don't have recess at the same time. So this is a great book for you to discuss about possible things that might happen in class. But of course, as you can see, it's first grade, so it's very Americanized. There are some things that will happen, like, you can see here that the character is preparing her own lunchbox, which at P1 you also can. But I think most parents will also want them to practice learning how to buy food at the canteen. So not everything in the book might be relevant. Just to move on to something that's more relevant, these are actual pictures taken from our P1 school environment here on the left, and then also maybe like a typical preschool environment on the right. So I think from the pictures, and you might even want to use similar pictures to talk to your child about the differences. From the pictures, I think the differences are already quite obvious. So here we have tables and chairs for everyone. and the children are expected to sit in these for most of the school day. You can see turn taking, so you can see that the children are well trained to raise up their hands if they want to speak. This picture on the left doesn't quite show the teacher to student ratio, but I think most of us know it's one teacher to 30 over students versus in the preschool classroom where it's one teacher to about 12 students. So in terms of turn taking, being patient, making sure that you can get the teacher's attention if you need something, these are all skills that a P1 child will need to pick up on. Right, so maybe as parents, what we have involved in the form of suggestions would be to role play at home. What are some real life scenarios that they may encounter in school? So, for example, how might you ask a teacher for help? Do you run all the way to the front of the classroom, or do you raise your hand and wait for the teacher to call on you? Do you shout very loudly? Things like that, right? So, what is the correct way to ask a teacher for help? How would we pay for food at the canteen? What to imagine, how many stalls, how do you decide what you would like to eat, and then also how do you count money, right? How do you make sure you get back the correct change? This is very important. If they don't have a phone, mommy and daddy's phone numbers, how to make a phone call if you need someone, if you need mommy and daddy to come get you. If your child needs to take the school bus, where would you go in the school to actually take the school bus? How do you pack your school bag? Okay, how do you take turns? How do you listen, right, for long periods of time? So on this note, so a lot of the previous role play examples that we talked about, you can actually try when you and your child go for the P1 orientation. So I think all schools, they actually hold the P1 orientation. It's typically during the November and December period before school starts in January. So this is where you get to actually visit the school with your children. And this is where you might want to practice some of these things. Where do you go to take the school bus? Where's the canteen? How many stalls are there at the canteen? What do they sell? What food do you want to queue up for? Things like that. This is also an opportunity for you to get to know their P1 teachers and maybe even other classmates. Get to know where is their classroom and where is the toilet. So, if you need to go to the toilet, that you don't get lost when you try to come back to the classroom. So how do you orientate yourself? Dismissal is also really important. Some schools, they make the children wear name badges on the first week or the first day. And then on the badge, it will actually, the parent will actually fill in what is the dismissal procedure. So do they wait at the school gate for a grandparent, the parent, the helper? Do they take the school bus? But of course, on the parents' end, it will be really good also if you can orientate your child during this orientation day also, to tell them where to go, to wait for the bus, things like that. Okay, so I've actually come to the end of my sharing. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and share in the chat. Otherwise, I actually want to share that we offer English, Math, and the Young Readers program at the Eton Academy. So for English, if your child is still in early years and you want some added preparation for P1, we offer that from N2, K1, K2, and of course all the way from P1 to P6 as well. Same thing for Math, we offer it for K1 and K2, and then P1 to P6 as well. So all the throughout the child's learning journey, if you will need that added boost and supplementation to their learning, feel free to come to us and we can explore the classes that you might sign up for. As I mentioned, there's the Young Readers program, which is a 14-week accelerated phonics program offered to K1, K2, and P1 children. So if you feel that your child needs that added support, in just 14 weeks, we will be able to cover the simple sounds blending skills, and your child will be able to exhibit some levels of reading after that 14-week program. So please inquire if you are interested. Okay, and let me just end off by thanking everybody for participating. Our website is there. The class schedule is also there. You can scan the QR code for a quick link to our website. Otherwise, you can take note of that. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for participating. It was great having you with us today. Thank you.